Holding. Written and read by Graham Norton. Part 1. Chapter 1. It was widely accepted by the residents of Dunedin that should a crime be committed, and Sergeant Collins managed to apprehend the culprit, it would be very unlikely that the arrest had involved a pursuit on foot. People liked him well enough, and there was no name-calling as such, but it was still quite unsettling for the village that their safety depended on a man who broke into a sweat walking up for communion. This particular morning, however, nobody seemed overly concerned. Main Street, being the only street, contained most of the action. The village was still waiting for winter to arrive, and yet Susan Hickey looked like she was preparing for an Arctic expedition. She was huddled over awkwardly with a wire brush, trying to remove a few patches of rust from her gate. She was also keeping a silent tally of the wine bottles Breed Reardon was placing carefully into the recycling. 16! Had the woman no shame? On the other side of the street, outside the pub, Cormac Byrne coughed up a very satisfying lump of phlegm and dispatched it through the air to land in the gutter. Over by the phone box, the dusty black-and-white collie dog that belonged to the Lions from the garage looked up, satisfied himself that everything was as uninteresting as he had assumed, and put his head back down between his paws. Outside O'Driscoll's shop, post office and cafe, the Garda car, sitting low over its tires, gave the impression of having been there for some time. In the driver's seat, with his stomach wedged against the steering wheel, sat Sergeant Patrick James Collins. The names had been chosen because his mother's father, Patrick, had died just 6 weeks before her son was born, and because his mother was a big fan of James Garner, the actor that starred in the Rockford Files. His father had provided the surname. In retrospect, the care put into his christening was misplaced, since everyone simply knew him as PJ. PJ Collins had not always been fat. On long summer evenings he had played with the other children in the lane at the back of his parents' shop in Limerick. Kick the can, hide and seek. What time is it, Mr. Fox? The high-pitched laughter, accusations of cheating, and occasional crying filled the still air of dusk, until the clang of a colander or the sizzle of frying onions called them in for their dinner. He missed that feeling of just being one of the gang. He could hardly remember what it felt like not to be noticed or judged. Puberty had brought with it a combination of appetite and inertia that led to a thickening of the skin and the end of his days as one of the lads. He hadn't needed his mother's nagging to see what was happening, but somehow, despite constant private vows to get his weight under control, he just got bigger and bigger, until by the time he left school, he felt the task of slimming down was beyond him. Looking back, he could see that he had hidden behind his size and used it as an excuse, so he didn't have to compete in all the trials of adolescence. No need to summon up the courage to ask a girl out on a date, because which of the Margarets or Fionas with their long, pale necks and shiny hair would want his warm, clammy hands holding them on the dance floor? The other boys tried to outdo each other with fancy leather-soled shoes or bright stickers on their bikes. But PJ knew that no matter what he did, he could never be cool. Being overweight hadn't made him happy necessarily, but it had helped him avoid a great deal of heartache. It got him off the hook. Life as a guard suited PJ. The uniform and the car didn't make him feel any more alien than he always had, and keeping a strict professional distance between himself and the neighbours he had to police was no great challenge for him. He stared out of the window at the long, slow hill that led the tourist cars on towards the coast and the beauty they had been promised. People didn't stop in Dunedin. In defence of the casual traveller, there was little reason why they should. There was nothing to make the village stand out from any other. Wedged into a gentle green valley, jagged terraces of 2- and 3-story buildings lined the road, painted long ago in the sort of pastel colours usually associated with baby clothes. At the bottom of Main Street, there was an old bridge across the River Torn. Beyond that, the solid grey chapel kept
Sample complete. Ready to continue?